ABC-7 Extra.
Good evening, I'm Saul Saenz, and this is ABC-7 Extra. Earlier in the week, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed a petition with the Texas Supreme Court. That petition calls on several counties, which include El Paso, to follow election laws when it comes to mail-in ballots. El Paso County commissioners want to permit voters who fear contracting COVID-19 at a voting site to be able to cast their vote by mail. Commissioners authorized the county attorney to file a brief supporting a Travis County court judge's ruling. That ruling would essentially allow all Texas voters to cast a ballot by mail due to fears of COVID-19 pandemic. Paxton argues fear of contracting COVID-19 is not a reason to request a mail-in ballot. Joining us now is UTEP professor Richard Pineda. Dr. Pineda is the director of the Sam Donaldson Center for Communication Studies. Also joining us is Lisa Wise. Ms. Wise is the El Paso County Elections Administrator. First of all, thank you so much for taking time on this Sunday evening to talk to our voters, to talk to our viewers about this particular issue. I want to start with you, Ms. Wise. Where are we so far? Have you heard from the courts concerning this issue?
Yes, so thank you for having me. And on Thursday, we learned from a panel of the Texas 14th Court of Appeals that susceptibility to the coronavirus does count as a disability under state election code, and therefore is a valid reason to vote by mail. So we will continue to process ballot by mail requests as they're received, as we've been doing according to law and as at the direction of the courts.
Dr. Pineda, your opinion on this, is this unprecedented? Have we ever been in a situation such as this where people fear contracting some sort of disease and may not be able to make it to a polling site?
This is unprecedented, Saul, and I think that one of the things that we're seeing across the country is attempts by lots of different municipal and state authorities to make sure that voter rights are protected. And I think that that's absolutely crucial in a time like this. And I think that the goal should be to try to enfranchise as many people to vote. And I think if there's legitimate health concerns, and I think certainly at this moment there are, then you know, state and local government as well as the federal government should do everything that it can to ensure that voters have a chance to cast their vote.
I'm going to read the Texas Election Code, or at least a portion of it, and this is how it reads. This is the Texas Election Code. A qualified voter is eligible for early voting by mail if the voter has a sickness or physical condition that prevents the voter from appearing at the polling place on Election Day without a likelihood of needing a personal assistance or of injuring the voter's health. Ms. Wise, is this portion of the Election Code essentially saying, look, if you fear for injuring your health or contracting something, does this portion of the code pretty much state what people are saying, that look, we fear contracting COVID-19 and that's why we'd rather have a mail-in?
Right. Well, I mean, that's the question. I mean, that's the question that everybody's trying to answer. And as you know, I mean, there've been several court cases brought up the last couple of weeks going around what is the definition of disability? What is the definition of doing something that could harm your health? Is fear of COVID enough? Is the lack of immunity enough? And that's what we're waiting for, along with everyone else, following through the court system to see what the courts say on that. So that part of the law is what everyone is waiting to find out on how the courts interpret that.
Dr. Pineda, do you think that perhaps this is being politicized, and that's why perhaps the Texas Attorney General is saying, look, hold on, let's take this to the Supreme Court, let's see what the Supreme Court has to say. Is this being politicized?
Oh, yeah, absolutely so. And I think that should be a point of concern for every voter, regardless of your partisan belief. I mean, I think that the election codes are set in place largely as a result of trying to ensure that elections are fairly maintained and that people have a responsibility. And I understand the sense that this is asking voters to take on the full extent of their responsibility. But in this particular case, I think that states and local governments have the ability to be able to protect the voter and still encourage them. But I think any attempt to not do that really does come across as a very partisan effort. And I think you can look at what's been going on this week in Texas and even look nationally and that sort of dialogue. And I think this sense of trying to disenfranchise voters seems to be a largely partisan issue and one that's greatly concerning to somebody like me who studies elections.
Ms. Wise, how do you distance yourself from all the political realm of all this going on and try to get voters any way to vote, even if it includes mail-in ballot, just by virtue of the fact that they fear contracting the virus?
So, you know, that kind of puts our office in an interesting place in the way that we have to do what the law says. We don't cherry pick what parts of the statute we follow. We have been following the law, but even prior to this situation and this question, the voter always had the discretion on whether or not they believed they had a disability and qualified to vote by mail. They simply mark disability on the application and we process it. There's nothing in the code that directs us of a verification process on that. So this is nothing new to us in the actual processing of ballot by mail applications. So for us, our office basically as administrators we follow the code. We've been following the code since we've started taking by mail applications. We'll continue to follow that. And we obviously try to stay out of the political side of that and just follow whatever the courts direct and whatever the election code states.
In the conversation. You're watching ABC-7 Extra. When we come back, we'll hear from a prominent El Paso Republican who says if you can go shopping, you can cast your ballot in person. You're watching ABC-7 Extra, where news comes first.
So many of us at ABC-7 got our start at UTEP, so it's only natural for ABC-7 to now be the official home of UTEP minor sports.
The only place for special access, exclusive interviews, and local TV broadcast rights.
Starting this fall, we'll be bringing you special weekly coaches segments in our newscast.
We use our exclusive behind-the-scenes access to bring you stories about UTEP sports you won't find anywhere else.
UTEP
and ABC-7
teaming up
for El Paso.
Go Miners!
On August 3rd, a young man filled with racial hatred sought to destroy and divide our community.
Instead, we came together in unity and mutual love.
COVID-19, this destructive virus, now poses a new threat to our community and its members.
It is time for our community to come together again.
If we make sacrifices now by adopting safe practices, we will defeat this new threat. Once again, we will be a model to the nation.
Together, we are El Paso strong.
So our man in the JSA died saving the world. The Justice Society must live on. We need to make a plan.
I have a 3-point plan. Find them, surprise them, kick their...
You're 15 years old. Act like a normal teenager.
This is my chance, Pat.
Do you ever listen to anything that I say to you?
Stargirl premieres this Tuesday on the El Paso Las Cruces CW.
600 ESPN El Paso is your source for sports. And get ABC-7 news updates weekdays from 7:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. 600 ESPN El Paso, a partner with ABC-7, where news comes first.
93.1 Kiss FM El Paso.
I got this feeling.
With Mike and Trisha Mornings. Today's best mix while you work.
You're amazing.
93.1 Kiss FM.
The coronavirus outbreak is a huge story.
But ABC-7's commitment to you won't change. We report facts, not rumors.
We've been learning more details about the positive case that was reported.
We find the context, depth, and perspective to help you make smart decisions to keep your family safe.
Together, we'll fight fear and give you practical suggestions from the experts who know best.
We need to be prepared for flare-ups in certain regions.
We're working our hardest to keep your trust in ABC-7,
where news comes first.
When you need the latest news about the coronavirus outbreak, turn to the ABC-7 Alert Center.
The antiviral medication remdesivir is on its way to El Paso and will soon be used by the staff at University Medical Center.
With new details breaking minute by minute, the ABC-7 Alert Center has real-time updates to keep you informed and your family safe.
The COVID crisis in America has sparked House Democrats to unveil the largest relief bill in history.
Only on ABC-7, where news comes first.
At ABC-7, we know the coronavirus health threat is serious. If not to ourselves, then maybe to someone with underlying health issues we happen to meet.
We know it's important to do our part and reduce the chance of spreading the COVID-19 virus. So many ABC-7 employees are working from home and having meetings by phone.
We're keeping our distance from each other and the newsmakers we deal with. No handshakes, but plenty of regular hand washing.
Please join us and help the Borderland come through this stronger than ever.
The Borderland has shown a tremendous ability to come together and help each other out, and now is one of those times. There's no need for long lines and empty shelves.
Our stores are open in compliance with health department recommendations, and our teams are here to serve you. Our supply chains are strong. We will continue to restock our shelves as quickly as we can. We'd like everyone to take a deep breath and think about your neighbors.
Don't contribute to panic. Don't buy more than you need. Help ensure that there's enough for everyone. Thank you.
Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra. I spoke with the chairman of the El Paso Republican Party, Adolfo Tellez. Mr. Tellez says if people can shop for groceries, they can cast their ballot at a voting site.
I'm disappointed that the commissioners would even put that on the table. Our citizens here are currently, they're going out to do their grocery shopping. They're going out to get their medicines. They're going out to get their haircuts. They're going out for a number of reasons, and our businesses have adapted accordingly to maintain, some protection for our citizens. Our county elections administrator, Lisa Wise, has done a great job and is planning significant additional steps that we haven't done in the past to secure the health. Be careful with our citizens that might be higher risk.
I also want to welcome back UTEP Professor Richard Pineda. Dr. Pineda is the director of the Sam Donaldson Center for Communication Studies, as well as Ms. Lisa Wise, who is the county elections administrator. Welcome back. Ms. Wise, you just heard Mr. Tellez referring to you and some of the precautions that you all are taking. What exactly are those precautions that you're taking at a polling site?
Thank you. So, Mr. Tellez is correct. And a lot of the precautions that we are taking for those voters who do go to the polling place to vote, we're going to be using fewer machines in order to respect the social distancing. It's going to probably look a lot in that way like kind of a checkout. It's going to have machines 6 feet apart. There's going to be spaces and arrows not taped on the floor. We're going to be using gloves and face shields. We've got sanitizer, wipes for each machine after each use. And then we're also using disposable stylus this time, so you shouldn't have any need to touch the actual machine, and then you will dispose of that on your way out once you're done voting.
Because of this, Ms. Wise, isn't that argument enough for the Attorney General to say, look, we're taking all the precautions, we don't need to vote by mail?
Well, I mean, that's for the court to decide. I mean, that's something that we don't really get into the argument on that side of it. If the court says you can vote by mail and all you do is, you mark the disability, we get that application, we process it just like we did in last year, the year before that. And if the Attorney General says, or if the courts say, yes, you can apply for ballot by mail, this is the way, we do it, we will process it that way. If the courts say this is what you need at the polling sites, then we process it that way. So we don't really get involved in that side of it. We follow what the courts direct and what the election code says.
Dr. Pinella, you're probably already familiar with Ken Paxton's brief, but I'm going to read you a portion of it and then get your opinion on the other side. Quote, fear of contracting COVID-19, however, is a normal emotional reaction to the current pandemic and does not amount to an actual disability that qualifies a voter to receive a ballot by mail. Your opinion, sir?
Well, I think there's two things to unpack, Saul. The first is in response to the chairman's comments. I think that it fails a really simple, logical test. I mean, he's saying that everybody is going to the store and everybody is doing this. That's simply not true. I, for example, am immunocompromised. I don't go to the store. I don't go to eat. I have services that are available to me to be able to bring those things to me because I fear putting myself in that public space. So this is sort of the point that I think defeats the chairman's argument and largely to an extent the argument the Attorney General is making. My desire to continue to support the system, i.e. voting, or to use the chairman's simplistic specific example of restaurants or other businesses, I still support those things. And there have been very simple alternates to make sure that I can continue to support those things. And that in itself is, in a nutshell, Saul, is the issue. You should be able to have a system that provides those additional protections, and not because the Attorney General or the chairman of the Republican Party thinks this is a psychological dilemma, but rather because there are legitimate health concerns. And I think that the solution to be able to do mail-in ballots is perfect. I mean, when you carry out the argument that's being made, and I think this is really important for people to consider, why is there concern that somebody is making the case they have a disability? I mean, this to me really boggles the mind, because in some cases it's very easy to say, well, they shouldn't have that opportunity, but I don't actually understand why. And again, to use the chairman's own example, I think it's a perfect example. We can still take advantage of all of the things that we're trying to defend in an open economy and an open democracy with a very simple alternative, which is mail-in ballots.
Ms. Wise, what is it that a person has to do to say, look, I need a mail-in ballot because of such and such, I have a disability? Is the argument that strong that they have to provide to ask for a mail-in ballot? Do they have to prove their disability or their fear in this case?
No. So that's nothing that's changed. And that's, and that's a big component of this argument, is that we've been receiving ballot by mail requests for this election cycle, since January 1, when annual ballot by mail requests can come in. And if people have marked, for the primary election as disability, or the primary runoff as disability, we don't have any verification process. The law does not have anything in place that one requires anything like something to be sent in, anything for us to verify. There's just nothing. There's no instrument in the Texas Election Code for verifying a ballot request by disability. You simply would print it off of our website or request one, or use your own format as long as it has all of the information. And under the reason, you would check disability. And that has not changed. So nothing on our side as far as the processing of ballot by mail requests has been altered by any of the court orders or anything like that. We take them at the way that they're marked. It's up to the voter on what they believe qualifies as that. That hasn't changed, and we continue to do that.
Dr. Pineda, then the Attorney General's argument is purely philosophical then, right?
I think it's an attempt to try to minimize the number of people that vote. And I guess it goes back to the point that you made earlier, which is this has become incredibly partisan. And I think the way that partisan efforts to try to disenfranchise voters continues to increase. I mean, at the end of the day, Saul, the question to ask yourself is, why is this a bad idea, right? There's arguments about the system and the structure, but the truth is, at the end of the day, if this is a system that is ruled legal, and you have people that have the possibility to vote, I don't quite ever understand why that's a bad thing. And I think, there is always a sort of second implicit, this will lead to voter fraud, this will lead to other problems. But I don't think that that's ever been borne out. And it always makes me nervous, regardless of political identification, if somebody is saying we want to minimize the number of people to vote, or we want to put threshold tests in to try to make sure that people reach a threshold to be able to vote, that's always suspicious to me. And I think that people really need to understand what the rationale for that argument is. And again, I mean, one final point, if the chief law enforcement officer for the state, the Attorney General, is in fact worried about voter fraud, and this is a case where literally you are flagging a potential crime months before it happens, it seems to me that they can build in any number of safeguards to ensure that there aren't problems with this process. And I think that's why this is always a disingenuous point to say we want to try to control and ensure security or safety. I think the best way to do that is to open up resources that allow people to do things like voting via mail.
Well, I was going to bring up the topic of voter fraud, but I'll ask you that after the break. You're watching ABC-7 Extra. We'll be right back.
We all need heroes now more than ever. If you have encountered a hero in healthcare or a first responder, we want to know. Go to the share link at kvia.com or the ABC-7 News app and upload a photo so they can be recognized. Healthcare Heroes, sponsored by Raising Cane's.
Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso is open. We're operating responsibly and under the guidance of all COVID-19 protocols, and we've got your back. If you buy a new Hyundai by May 31st and lose your job due to COVID-19, we'll cover your payments for up to 6 months. And right now, we have 0% APR up to 84 months on new Tucsons, plus 0 payments for 120 days on new Elantras and 3 years included maintenance. This is a tough time, but we're all in this together.
My Oscar, he's such a good boy.
You can make a difference, El Paso.
The restaurant industry is decimated.
The El Paso Community Foundation is connecting laid-off restaurant workers with the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank.
You can help fund temporary employment for food service workers by clicking on the link at kvia.com.
Mountain Star Sports will make a matching donation to the food bank.
Please support the dignity of a job and fresh, nutritious meals for borderland children and food pantries.
So many of us at ABC-7 got our start at UTEP, so it's only natural for ABC-7 to now be the official home of UTEP minor sports.
The only place for special access, exclusive interviews, and local TV broadcast rights.
Starting this fall, we'll be bringing you special weekly coaches segments in our newscast.
We use our exclusive behind-the-scenes access to bring you stories about UTEP sports you won't find anywhere else.
UTEP
and ABC-7
teaming up
for El Paso.
Go Miners!
Congratulations to Mauricio Casillas for winning first place in the Texas Associated Press Awards for specialty or beat reporting on U.S.-Mexico border issues. That's the second year in a row Mauricio has won first place in this category.
Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra. Also want to welcome back our guest, UTEP Professor Richard Pineda. Also joining us is Ms. Lisa Wise. I'll start with you, Ms. Wise. Dr. Pineda brought up a very good point. There's an argument by some folks who say that mail-in ballots or a lot of mail-in ballots can open up the or pave the way for voter fraud. Your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, the only things I can really base my opinion are obviously the same type of studies they've seen, and then obviously being in election administration on this side of it since 2006. I come from a state that has ballot by mail for no excuse, and I have not seen that as a fact. I have not seen those numbers, so I'm not sure where those those statements are coming from. But personally and professionally, I have not seen that.
Do you take any preventative measures to try to avoid something like that from happening?
Right. So for us, as far as the election code is pretty clear on a ballot by mail actually goes through a couple different committees, which are appointed by both parties. It's a bipartisan effort. They go through the ballot opening board committee, where they're made sure that everything was signed correctly. Then they go to the signature verification committee, where they actually look at at matching signatures. So there's a lot of things that happen on the back end and on the front end, making sure you can't send a voter send them a ballot twice. The system doesn't allow you to do that. So there are a lot of things that we do to make sure that we do process ballot by mail applications according to law. And we've had plenty of elections where we've had, 10,000, 12,000 ballot by mail applications and ballots sent out without issue.
The upcoming election that we have now is runoff, actually, from June 29th to July 10th, which is a period that's been doubled from 10 to 20 days. And does that actually, I know you have much more time to process all this, but what sort of turnout are you expecting for this runoff?
Our turnouts in El Paso County on a race like this are relatively low. I mean, if we were to see 5%, that would fall in line. 4.5%, 5% is what we've seen in the past. The pandemic may cause it to go below that. We may see, depending on what comes out of the court system, we may see people who vote by mail who have the tendency to not vote in the primary runoff. It's still hard to manage that, but I do believe we'll probably see a pretty low turnout in the runoff, and then we'll just have to figure out what that means for November, depending on what the courts decide.
Dr. Pineda, was such a low voter turnout expected? Why do you think that someone is sounding off the alarms now in terms of mail-in ballots? Why do you think that's happening now with such a expected low voter turnout?
Well, I mean, I think that the argument's being made sort of absent the the turnout now or even in the future. I mean, I think generally we've got incredibly low voter turnouts, and you can follow these patterns. So a runoff for a municipal election, for example, is going to be low compared to a presidential race or presidential year. But I think that the bigger question is this. So I think when we start talking about the risk of voter fraud, the data bears out that that's an incredibly small risk. But I think it's easy to take one example and sort of say this is the door that gets opened up. I would say this, that knowing that there are protections that are in place, I think is reassuring. And I think Ms. Wise in the office in El Paso have done a fantastic job in that regard. But also, I think this idea of knowing, if there really is a fear that this is sort of an ongoing risk, there are a number of different entities that can create protections to ensure that doesn't happen. And that's why I think voter fraud is, again, a disingenuous argument against engaging people and franchising voters. I think there's this sense of you can't risk this happening. And the analogy for this is simple, Saul. I know that cars can be dangerous in certain ways, and so we set speed limits, and we assume that people will follow them. And if they don't, we've got a system to check and ensure safety that people are following these rules. Mail-in ballots are not any different, or these questions of voter fraud. If there are those things that are happening, we have ways to investigate and we have ways to penalize them, but we don't stop people from voting in the same way we don't tell people you just can't get on the freeway because there's a risk you're going to hurt yourself. I think we do it. We come up with a system of safeguards, and we ensure that those safeguards are transparent and everybody understands them. It's when we say we just can't do that and we don't have a way to ensure 100% integrity of the process, so we shouldn't try the process, those arguments make me nervous.
So in essence, you're claiming that what you're saying is that if people believe, or certain groups believe, there may be voter fraud because of mail-in ballots due to fears of COVID-19, then they should actually start working on taking preventative measures.
That's right. And I think that you've got municipal and state voter authority that can come up with systems that work really well. And I think that there is always a fear for change. I mean, you've seen this even in El Paso County. There's been, concern about the transition between voting machines and the way they work. But here's the other thing, Saul. Even if there was distrust of the local election system, which I do not believe there is, even if that was the case, the system has procedural protections. There are people that are allowed to watch how the votes are processed. There are people that are allowed to challenge it. And this is the other thing. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. So in other words, I don't just send out a ballot and now suddenly have no responsibility and no way to backtrack that ballot. But I think if you listen to the arguments against it, there's this sense that suddenly it'll be the Wild West because mail-in ballots are used. I don't think that's true. And I think that the logic and the reasoning is always a little bit specious. And that's what's problematic. I think if there were a very clear explanation of the problem, then there can be a clear and defined way to solve the problem. And so I think we always venture on trying to engage voters and trying to allow voters an easier way to participate in the process. So I think especially given sort of this unprecedented time.
Okay, well, Dr. Pineda, Mr. Wise, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us on this Sunday evening on such a very important issue. I'm Saul Saenz, and this has been ABC 7 Extra. Thank you. Good night y buenas noches.